Hello, welcome to the Redline Blades YouTube channel. My name is Dan, coming at you with a video on how to disassemble and take care of your Spyderco Manix lightweight. The knife I'm going to be using today is the Salt variant of the Manix 2 lightweight. We have this for sale on our site. It's a fantastic EDC user-friendly performance knife right here that is going to take you through whatever your conditions and environment you're going to need and do just about anything you can need of a knife. Considering how corrosion resistant and tough this folder is, you're probably very rarely going to need to disassemble it. But every once in a while, you're probably going to want to get in here, clean it out, and you may want to swap around some parts, get new scales for it, clips, anything like that. So hopefully this video can help you out in the future. All the tools I'm going to need are right here on your screen. A collection of bits, some rubbing alcohol, small cleaning cloths, Loctite, lubricant, and drivers. That's everything you're going to need to disassemble this, so let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is take my T8 bit. This is a Weehaw brand. So I've done this whole process with the knife open so far. I would probably recommend doing it with the knife closed, as that will just be a little bit safer. You won't have to worry about the edge or anything. I always recommend you use very high quality bits when you're working on your knives. This is going to reduce your chances of stripping anything. So I'm going to take out this first body screw here. It uses all the body screws on this use a T8, and the pivot looks like it uses a T10. So I'm going to get that first screw out and put it right here, and then I'm going to keep going down the body just like this. And sometimes these screws are going to be pretty tough, so having a nice driver that you can get a good grip on can be really important for this. These screws are coming out very easily, so I'm going to switch to my spinning driver here to make things a little bit easier. And break it loose with the bigger handle. There, now that it's loose, I can easily take it out. That one definitely has a bit of Loctite on it. Actually, it looks pretty clean of Loctite. I guess it was just torqued in there. And pocket clip screw, take that off. That one was really loose. Also uses a T8. If all you want to do is take your pocket clip off, here's what I would recommend doing. Take your pocket clip screw, push that, put that in here without the pocket clip on. Because to switch the pocket clip, you have to take this barrel out. Now you can use that screw to press the barrel out like that. Now the barrel is popped out, loosen the screw, and barrel is loose, so you can easily push it out with the end of your driver. And now you can put your pocket clip on this side, screw it in, and you're good to go. Now I'm going to pop this screw loose. That one definitely was in pretty tight, so you're going to need your bigger driver for that. Take that out, and these two screws up here are shorter than the rest of the body screws. You can see that linked difference here, so make sure you keep those separated from the rest of the body screws. Now it is time for the pivot, and for that you're going to need a Torx size T10. Put that into my Weehaw. This is called the Weehaw stubby driver. And break that loose. Actually came out pretty easily. Sometimes Spyderco pivots can be tough. If you look closely there, you can see that it has a lot of Loctite on it. Sometimes they'll put more, sometimes they'll put less, but that's pretty normal to see. Now that I have all my screws out here, what I'm going to do is gently wiggle this handle back and forth, and it should pop off just like that. That's what your internals look like for this knife. And now you want to be careful with the spring here, because this is just a coil spring. It is not contained by anything. So I've done this whole process with the knife open so far. I would probably recommend doing it with the knife closed, as that will just be a little bit safer. You won't have to worry about the edge or anything. But it doesn't really matter which way you choose to do it. Now you have this piece right here that goes on the blade. Set that aside. The next step now is to take the other side of the pivot out. I'm going to take my driver and loosen this screw and put both pivot screws up there. Now I can open the knife and pop the blade out, just like this. Here's the plastic piece for the other side. And here's the pivot, washer, and this plastic piece. I'm going to set that aside with the blade. Now this axis lock assembly should, or ball bearing lock assembly should just pop out like that. And now I have this knife completely separated and disassembled. This part of the backspacer is integral to this handle scale, so you can't remove it or anything. It's fine to just leave these. The ball bearing is loose in the cage here, so be very careful you don't let that roll away. It goes in the cage in that depression right here. So I'm going to set that right up here. And here's your backspacer assembly. What I'm going to do is take a cleaning cloth and some rubbing alcohol and just clean off this blade. So that's everything clean and taken care of. Now it is time to reassemble this. All right, now to reassemble this, it's probably easiest to go ahead and take the pivot out of this black metal interface piece here. I'm just going to kind of press and wiggle that out. And then I'm going to start by putting this right here. Now here comes the tricky part. You're going to take the backspacer piece and the ball bearing and mate those together like this. And then while holding on to that whole assembly, press on the ball bearing lock and begin to put this into place, just like that. And if you get it just right, you can put your whole backspacer assembly in right there, and that's good to go. Now, this washer doesn't actually need to be on here yet. To make this easier, I'm going to go ahead and put in the first screw right here. This screws into the top of the backspacer, so that's going to keep everything locked in place here. Now the spring is captive, the ball is captive, and the lock actually functions and everything. Right now, nothing's going to fall out. That's going to make our lives a lot easier. Now you have your two washers, and you want to make sure you put these back in the same orientation you were. So if you look on this washer, you can see there are some shiny surfaces on this side of it, and this side of it is completely new in that stone-washed looking finish. You want to take the shiny parts and put that out. That's what is going to be facing towards the blade. Now your pivot pin, notice on this it has a D shape. So it is D-shaped right here. I'll try and include a picture of that as well in a close-up. But it's D-shaped, and that corresponds to a D shape on this piece. You can see there's a D right on this side of it. So this pivot pin will only go in one way, and it's really, really important that you get that put in the correct way. Otherwise, it won't seat properly, and your knife won't go back together correctly. So I'm going to make sure that D is lined up, and it pops all the way in, nice and flat and flush. Now I can actually go ahead and put on this side of the pivot, or this pivot screw right here, and get that nice and tight. Now at this step, you can add your lubricant. I'm going to be using a grease. This is made by Super Lube. I really like this stuff. It's cheap and it works really, really well. I'm just gonna put a little bit on this washer right here. You don't need very much. And I'm gonna put a little bit on the pivot itself. Now the other tricky part you're going to hold the handle in one hand, blade in your other, and pull back on the ball bearing lock while you slide the blade in onto the pivot, just like that. It should pop in, and now the whole assembly is locked on, and the knife actually functions and locks up and everything. It's funny, it doesn't even have much play at all, even with only one side of the handle on. So nothing is going to fall out now. Everything is nice and secure, and then the assembly is going to be really, really easy from here. So take this washer, look for the side that has the wear on it. That's this side, and that is what is going to face the blade. Add a little bit of lube onto this side of the blade, just like that, and put the washer on. And then this black piece goes on the pivot. Remember, it has the D shape, so make sure that is lined up. It can only go onto the pivot one way. Now that I have that lined up, I can take the other side of the handle and pop that on. The first screw I'm going to put in is the one that goes right up here and into the back spacer. That's what I want to put on first. Just like that. Get that tight. Nothing needs to be super tight right now. We're just kind of getting everything secure so it doesn't fall apart on us. And put the rest of the body screws in. And then I'll close it, make things a little bit safer. And now I'll put in this side of the pivot. And before I do that, I'm going to take my cloth and make sure the pivot is clean. I want to get off as much of that old Loctite as I can, because I'm going to put on a fresh coat of Loctite, and that sticks better onto a nice clean screw. So I'm just going to put a little drop of Loctite on there. You don't need much. Cover about half the threads in Loctite. If you do too much, you can have it drip actually into the pivot assembly, which will gum up your action, of course. And I should have done this when I put the first side of the pivot in, but I'm going to go ahead and take that out and clean off the screw, and then add Loctite here on both sides of the pivot. You probably don't need this on your body screws, but the pivot screws receive the most kind of impact and forces, and they're also the two most valuable screws on the knife. So I would recommend adding a small amount of Loctite to those when you reassemble your knife. Now the last screw to put in is for the pocket clip, so I'm going to take the barrel and put that in, and all of these barrels are D-shaped as well, so make sure you're putting that in the correct orientation. Put the pocket clip on right here, and then put the screw on and tighten that up. There we go. Now, first thing I'm going to do is check for blade play. Not much blade play. Action is a little bit stiff, so I'm going to loosen the pivot just a little bit. I had it very tight. That's better. And no blade play. It's good to check for blade play on ball bearing locks and axis locks and things like that with the blade not fully locked out, because this lock can apply enough tension that it can make even a loose blade feel tight. So check it at lockup, but also depress the lock and check it here. And then I also like to close it and check it when it's closed. So no lock, no wiggle in any of those positions. Now I'm going to take my T8 bit, put it back into my big handle, and use that to lock down the rest of these screws. I'm not cranking on these as hard as I can, just putting them in enough to where they're going to stay tight and have a lot of traction on the handle. And pocket clip. Amazing how smooth this is with just a plastic handle and some phosphor bronze washers. Really, really well made. Yeah, that's awesome. And the centering is ever so slightly off to the show side, but that really doesn't matter. It's not rubbing or anything. Absolutely no effect from that. Now, one more thing I'm going to do is put just a little bit of lubricant on the tang of the blade to interact with that ball bearing to smooth things up a little bit. Just put a little bit of lube on the back of the blade, make it a little smoother on the open and close. Awesome. So that is how to disassemble and maintain your Spyderco Manix to lightweight. This will apply to any version of the Manix 2 lightweight, at least it should. I believe they are all constructed exactly the same. Hopefully you can follow along and make this work for you. If you have any questions or run into any problems, drop us a comment down below and we'll be sure to get back to you. And if you have any thoughts on how we can improve this video or what you might want to see next time, definitely drop us a comment and we will listen to that. We definitely want your feedback on what you want to see. This channel is for you, our customers. So thank you very much for watching. Let us know your thoughts, and I'll catch you on the next one.